Hello and welcome. I am Steve Clemons, editor-at-large of The Hill. Thanks for joining us for our new program today, New Year, New Leaders. What's next for the 50-plus voter? An in-depth discussion of the priorities of older Americans and moving the nation forward. I'd like to thank our sponsor, AARP, for their support of today's event. America's most reliable voters, the 50-plus community, made their voices heard in droves, and newly elected officials will soon take their seats all across the nation. What steps will a new administration and a new, most likely divided Congress take to assist in our health and economic recovery? And how will policymakers keep promises made to these senior voters? To help us find out, we're going to be joined by a fantastic lineup of speakers, including newly elected, current, and former officials from around the country. But before we get underway, a few housekeeping notes. You can tweet us at The Hill Events. That's all one word, The Hill Events, using the hashtag #TheHillOlderVoters. I know that's a lot of spaces, so maybe you can drop one or the other, but please tweet. Send us your ideas. We're broadcasting live, and we'll be taking your questions throughout the program. And as with any live stream, if you have any difficulty, just push refresh, and it will solve all your problems. So with that, I'm very happy to start here with my first guest today, who has 40 years of experience in Washington as a government affairs professional, former 8-term congressman. He's a fantastic blogger, a good friend. After his time in Congress, he's acted as an advisor for a number of organizations, including the nonprofit Protect Democracy. Congressman Tom Coleman, great to see you again, my friend. Let me just ask you, you've been around. I mean, you were very active in writing about the importance of not seeing what we saw as our democratic norms erode more. You had previously campaigned for John Kasich of Ohio. So I just want to make it clear to everybody you're on the Republican, side of things. But I'd love to get a sense of where you think older Americans who came out at historic levels, higher, and in a greater percentage, I always look at things in terms of the pie, greater percentage of the pie than they were even previously. So what's on their dashboard? What do they care about from your perspective?
Well, Steve, thanks for inviting me to your show and those kind words. Well, first of all, I'm over 50 years of age, as you can tell.
So am I, pal. So am I.
Kind of through osmosis, trying to figure out exactly what I need or what the over 50s need.
Yeah.
First of all, this crisis that we have with the pandemic has got to be resolved. It has to be under control. We're very pleased that we have a vaccine now, and maybe two that have been approved. And seniors, as we have found, have been hit harder than any other age group. And so it's important for them that the new administration and what's left of the current administration figure out a transportation system that will be able to send these vaccines out to all parts of America, and that we will all be able to get our shots and be vaccinated against this pandemic. That's job number one. The other thing is, and it comes in hand with getting control of the virus, and that is to open up our economy full tilt. Right now, we're limping along. And we're doing okay, I guess, if you're in the stock market. But if you're not in the stock market, which is half the people in this country, or more than half, you're not doing too well financially. And so many seniors are on fixed income that this is hitting them very hard. So if we can get the economy going and get jobs going, get tax dollars flowing back to the Treasury, we can do certain things in government policies that make a lot of sense for seniors. Having said that, I know that AARP took a poll recently of seniors, asking them on what in their minds were important. And number one, the thing came out was honesty in government. Steve, that's what you and I have been working for years and decades. And we have seen, unfortunately, a lot of dishonesty in our government in the last 4 years plus. So I believe that the new administration under the leadership of President Biden will come in and establish ethic rules. They will stop what I feel are corruption and grifting and making money off of the office of the presidency, and turn it around. And that will restore confidence and maybe take down some of these polarized barriers that we have, because now I will talk about the Congress. It also has its faults. We have seen that senators who get briefed on intelligence information, for example, on the pandemic itself, suddenly go out and buy shares of stock in companies that might be rewarded, like through their medications and pharmaceuticals. So this has got to be reviewed by leaders of Congress, and they have got to stop this open trading of stocks as they get information, and we consider that inside information. That's wrong. But one of the things I wanted to talk today about, Steve, was the fact that so much of our democracy has come under assault that we need to do something about it. What can seniors do about it? And I've created in my own mind, I'm tossing it out here for the first time to the public, that we create a Seniors for Civic Education group and program. Seniors, more than anybody else in this country, have revere our democracy. They understand it, they've lived it, they've had experience with it. And some of them still, we have within our midst, fought for it. And so we have to translate that into a new generation of young people. Unfortunately, civics education is not required in many states. And I think that the seniors, if they get motivated, they can march on state capitals and say, we believe in civic education and here's why, and really do something good and turn our nation back into what it was before. It was so distorted through partisanship and polarization, and I think poor leadership in the presidency. So that's one thing I wanted to say. We need to shore up Social Security. That's a constant concern. When I was in Congress back in the 80s, we passed legislation raising the tax rates on payroll taxes, and it was going to get us into the year 2021, I believe it was at the time. That was a long way away. We're there already. So I believe that President Biden will propose, and I think the Congress will perhaps go along. It's unsure because we don't know who's going to control the Senate, of raising payroll taxes on the very wealthy. If you're very wealthy, the payroll taxes are like nickels and dimes to us, the rest of the public. So they need to pay more than their fair share. They need to be able to understand that Social Security is being relied on by a number of people in this nation. And if it goes into not into bankruptcy, but going into an unstable position, it's going to harm so many more people. And as the boomers obviously are through that, and the next generation coming on, they've got to have confidence in our Social Security system. So that needs to be done. I know that the cost of living, I always look and see what's the cost of living going to be for my Social Security increase this year. Well, there wasn't one because inflation has not gone up. But that doesn't mean that inflation for seniors hasn't gone up, because seniors have a little different payment structure that they have to pay for more medications than younger people. Sometimes their housing is more expensive. So all these things come into play instead of the old-time cost of living index, which is based on a bunch of component pieces. We ought to have a senior citizen component index, which really tracks the expenses of our seniors. So those are some things that should be and could be adopted by Congress and by the new president. And I'll turn it back to you, Steve. I've gone on way too long.
No, I mean, I didn't want to interrupt you because I sort of felt that what you had laid out was very valuable, and I'm intrigued with this Seniors for Civic Education. I mean, I remember when I first met you, in the early 1990s when you were in Congress and then in your role in the private sector after. I mean, this town, people across the aisle used to talk to one another. They would go on trips in Codels together. They would look at it, and there was sort of a reflection of at least the understanding you needed to talk across the aisle. And I'm just wondering, you know a lot of these folks still. Do you think there's an opportunity, a path back to that kind of mutual respect, even though you don't have to have a kumbaya relationship with the other side, but there's a mutual respect and understanding that everybody's on the same boat?
Well, I think you hit the word there, respect. I mean, I disagreed with some of my best friends in the Congress. We didn't vote together, but we sure enjoyed each other, and we had personal chemistry and respect. And I don't know why we have gotten into this position, but it needs to be unraveled. And I think, Joe Biden, maybe to a fault, is hoping and saying that he wants to get along with the other side and really get something done. I hope he's successful. We all hope he's successful. But as they say, it takes two to tango, and that would require the Republican Party to do something different than they did with President Obama, and that was not to go out and believe that they wanted to make him a one-term president, or they wanted him not to be successful. That's a terrible attitude, and that was voiced by the majority leader of the Senate. So those kinds of things need to be changed. We have whatever happens in these two Senate races in Georgia, which will decide who the majority party is in the Senate. We have a very close House of Representatives as well. So it's going to take a real determined effort by the administration to overcome these polarizations that we have. And it really is up to the members of Congress themselves to look themselves in the mirror and say, what am I doing and why am I doing this? And if you're not doing it for the sake of the country, for the sake of your children and grandchildren, then resign and go do something else. We need people in the Congress, both the House and the Senate, who are committed to doing good and not just doing good for themselves.
Let me just ask you lastly, Tom, if you were to give one bit of counsel to the Biden administration that is coming in to try to be able to talk to and find common cause with many of the supporters, and particularly many of the senior voters of Donald Trump, what would that look like?
Oh, wow, Steve.
Didn't tell you it was going to be an easy interview.
A lot of times people pigeonhole seniors or Gen Xers or millennials, and those are overly broad suggestions.
Sure.
Seniors are just like everybody else. We want a good economy. We want people to be treated decently. We want to have an inclusion of everybody. We want to have time and ability to play with our grandchildren or our children's children and be able to see them and connect with them. And that's why this pandemic and being isolated like we have is creating problems. So again, Joe Biden, take us out of the depths of despair that we're in now with the pandemic. Go out and follow that science. Give us the vaccines, and there'll be a brighter day. And that doesn't translate into any legislation. It just translates into doing what's right and what's decent.
Well, listen, former Congressman Tom Coleman of Missouri, who just on this conversation suggested we needed a group called Seniors for Civic Education. Sounds very interesting to me. Also an advisor to Project Democracy. Thanks so much for joining us today, Tom.
Thank you, Steve.